This is Rich Denny, Travis County Historical Commission. It is August 13th, 2024. Historic Aerials recently released 1937 aerial images for Travis County that they acquired from Tobin down in San Antonio. It covers various new spots in Travis County, one being Nameless, Texas. We didn't have these before. So in this hopefully short film, I'm going to randomly review the 1937, make some comments, just random observations, but also I will be comparing it with the 1964 that we had, which is 27 years later, so that's about a generation. So we'll look at changes in the landscape in that one generation, roughly one generation. The other reason for doing that is that having the 64 and the 37, we can tell what buildings were built after 37 and which were already existing in 37 and hence were older. This is all going to be in Google Earth. The image has been loaded into Google Earth. It's geo-referenced, but we'll start here with a look at here's Nameless. Here's Nameless School up here. And as you can see, there's a lot of development going on. So the image date here is going to be June 18th, 2023, when this particular image was taken on Google Earth. Okay, staying in Google Earth. So I've turned on roads just to show the overlap. So here's Nameless Road, here's Lindeman Road, various other things that show up. Turn it on and off. You can see that some of the roads in here. So just to let you know that when that goes on and off, that's what Google Earth is showing. Staying on the current image of Google Earth, I've turned on a number of landmarks on today's landscape. So we have Nameless School, we have the gray cabin, which at this point in June of last year was still there. It's now been moved over here, but in this image it's still there. We have the Gray Family Cemetery, which is now a historic Texas cemetery, and the marker application for that cemetery has been approved. So we're waiting development of the narrative. And here is the approximate location of the school tract that was deeded by the Gray family. So again, all today's landscape. So another thing I'm going to be flipping on and off periodically is the LiDAR image of the area. So this is the laser, it's the light imaging detection and ranging that's taken by aerophotographs. And one of the reasons for doing so is that the school track, the meets and bounds were in terms of a creek that was located up here. And it's hard to tell without the LiDAR that there is indeed a creek in here, but when you turn on the LiDAR you can see yeah, there's the creek. I'm going to turn just for a second, turn off the school track, and yeah, as you can see, it's a pretty sizable tree. There's a bit of an exaggeration in elevation depth in the LiDAR, but the thing to keep in mind about the LiDAR is that it was taken one before a lot of the major Treviso development happened, so it will be reflecting what was there before it got bulldozed. But on the other hand, it is fairly recent imaging, obviously, because lasers weren't invented anyway. I think, I don't know the exact date on the LiDAR images, but I think 2011 springs to mind. That may not be correct, but the point again, it predates a lot of the, luckily predates a lot of the Treviso development where they've bulldozed large areas. And you can kind of get an idea of that over here. While also, so it predates a lot of that, but on the other hand, it's going to be showing things like roads as they have been added since 1937, but are on the landscape when they did the LiDAR imaging. So with those preliminaries, let's look at 1937. So I've turned on the 1937 image. And I've made sure that true north is up here. It was off a little bit. So again, the same landmarks that we were looking at before. So there's the school in 1937. There's the gray cabin in 1937. And there have been some changes here we'll make note of. My mouse just died. One of the interesting changes that we noticed on the 1937 is this hip roof house. That is located approximately, as you can see, about where the Turner house is now, or where the Turners later built their new house, and there is a house there now. I'm not sure who the owners are, if it's in the Turner family or not. And then Gray Family Cemetery. I'm going to pull the Gray, so the Gray Cemetery, one of the problems we had, and I pulled the 1937s off here previously, we knew from going there in person, we had the latitude, longitude, the lat long. So we knew where it was located, and it's, like I say, it's been designated a historic Texas cemetery, and it's been filed with the Texas Historical Commission. So we knew where it was at, and we visited there. We've got photographs. The archaeologists with the developer have looked at it and stuff. But in aerial photographs, it was kind of hard. I mean, as you can obviously see, it's kind of hard to tell what's there, or that it is there. And when we looked, for example, at the 1964, if I zoom out, and so now we're looking at 1964, it was hard to tell, and I'm going to prevent you from cheating here, not cheating, but looking at the 64, it was hard to tell where the heck the cemetery was in the landscape precisely. In other words, was there anything there in 64 that we could use to get a look at what the cemetery may have looked like? Then when we got the 1937, I'm going to pull the 64 off back to today. So when we got the 1937, it was like, oh yeah, this is all pasture. In the oral interviews Mulkey Owens had done preceding the nameless historical marker, the material, the research for that, oh yeah, there's the graves that are out in the, quote, Anderson Cemetery. They were subsequent landowners after the Gray family. So I am going to pull off the pin for that, and you can see it's very obvious. Now that we've kind of gotten the cedar away and go back close to 30 years, the location of the cemetery pops out. So when we first got the aerial photographs, we're like, yeah, that looks like about the right area. And then when we compared it with the lat longs, yeah, it's in the right location. So now one of the things we can do is actually measure the spot that in 1937 they were calling out as the cemetery. So I've turned on the ruler function in Google Earth, and if we just do a rough, and I've got it set to feet here, so disregarding that, these are just rough estimates, okay? You can see it's about 36 feet long, And then if we measure the width, say like right about here, we're coming up with, whoops, we're coming up with about 16 feet wide. Okay, so that kind of gives you the dimensions of the cemetery as shown on this little blip here. Now the next interesting thing is, now that we know that that is the blip, is to now turn on the 1964, and you can see that's where it was at, right here. So again, I'll drop the pin in there so you can see, and then I'm going to take the pin away. Now what's interesting is you can see a discoloration here. That was the larger thing from the previous image, right in there. But you see that there is still a darker image right here, and I can't help but wondering if that isn't actually the burial that's above ground, Eliza and her babies, Eliza Gray and baby Gray. We assume baby Gray. If that isn't that. So in 37, it's interesting that when they were, plowing the field, this is what they were leaving. It's kind of hard to tell what this is. In talking to Mary, and I think we can kind of confirm, it looks, again, assuming this is Eliza's grave, and talking with Mary, having measured the direction, this is an east-west burial right here. And then if her husband is buried on either side, that again bears out that in 1937 they're reserving, this chunk of real estate here widthwise, and it then begs the question of, well, what's in this area? So one of the things when we're talking with the developer, now that we have this 37 image, is to take what the pocket park that they are planning that will go around the cemetery, and make sure that this full area at minimum falls within the pocket park. Okay, let's go up towards the Gray Cabin and the Nameless School area. So here, Nameless School right in here, and the cemetery is right here. I'm going to turn on the LiDAR. So the LiDAR kind of reflects what the cemetery, lets it pop out a lot. You can see the boundaries of the cemetery right here. You can actually see some of the monuments that are in there, so they pop out really well. 1937, there's the property. This is an interesting house or building. We don't know what this is. And hopefully, maybe looking at since this is a 1937 and there would have been a census in 1940, hopefully looking at the census, and we have an idea of who was living here in the Gray Cabin, the Gray House at that time. And in the census, they go house by house, so you kind of know who the neighbors are. Maybe we can figure out what this building is. I'm going to just for grins, well, not for grins, it's interesting to look at what the size of the building is. So that side, the north-south side, is about 27 feet long. And then if we measure the other side, I'm going to go to the non-shaded side. That didn't work very well, did it? Okay, let's try it again. There and there. I'm having troubles. Okay, so I got the measurement up now. So the other side is about 33 feet. So that gives us an idea. Pretty good size building. And as I mentioned in talking to Mary, so there is out at East Metro Park, when they developed that, the archaeologists recorded a similar building. I'd have to check the sizes, but I think roughly the same size. That was a 4-room building. So if you can imagine, I won't show a photo of the layout but basically it was a hip roof building like this, relatively square, and it was 4 rooms. So, room with windows and doors, and then I think they added some patios on the side. So it would be good to know what this house is. Turning on the 1964, you can see that at this point the Turner house is at that location. So again, what would be interesting to see is if the Turners have any, or any of their descendants have any recollection of what that building at that location was. Not to seed thoughts or anything, but we know that there was a general store and post office. And we know from another video that the USGS considered this, there was an intersection. This is County Road 290, which shows up here. And in the 1895 survey done by USGS, the center of the Nameless community is basically at the intersection of Nameless Road and what later would be called County Road 290. They probably knew it as the Baghdad Leander Road. Excuse me, Baghdad Leander Road, because it ran up to, and you can see there's a good chunk of the road is very visible in 1937. So in 1895, that road there is also. So somewhere out here, there was the Stroud General Store and Post Office. He was the first postmaster. So be curious to see. Is that it? Is it somebody else? Now let me zoom in on the gray cabin. So a couple things. So I'm going to pull the pin off of here. Pull the pin off so we can actually see it a little better. So the old road right there. You notice, and so now I'm going to flip back and forth between 64 and 37. So you can see one thing that's very clear in both of them. So back to 37, there's the chimney. So the house hadn't moved between 37 and 64, but now keep an eye on the outbuildings over here. So 37, we've got this building, and then fencing, pins of some sort. Okay, so take a look at that. Now 1964, the building, now that building that looked like it was here looks amazingly like that building. So there, 37, 64, 37, 64. So you kind of wonder if they didn't move that. Then the other thing is this. In 64, this area appears to have changed. So they reconfigured the outbuilding setup. The other thing I noticed about the gray house, notice in the gray house on the east side, which is the house has moved onto the county property next to Nameless School, is oriented pretty much the same north, south, east, west direction. So I call this the front of the house because that's the front we see over there. Notice that on the front of the house, the east side, there was a, and so we think it was a dog trot, dog run. There was a roof, a patio roof over what would have been the steps. And in 64, it looks like it has been removed. Another thing that's kind of interesting is just to see how, so I've turned on here the current roads in Google Map, how the roads then in 37 compared to today kind of line up. I'll zoom out a little bit here. So here's the old bridge where it used to cross is right there. And then it crosses pretty much the same place today. They've kind of, here's the creek. That's been straightened out. So not a tremendous amount of change. Again, as we've noted in on other aerials, Nameless Ranch Road, excuse me, is a new road. See it here, and in 1937, indeed in 1964, it's not there. So that's a new development. And then of course we have all the stuff that's going on with respect to Treviso. So the other big mystery was to take a look in 1937 over what we believe was the school track. Now let me turn on hillshade again to convince you that the track, the meets and bounds. So in surveys, there's meets and bounds. Meets are, azimuth, directions, north, south, degrees. The bounds part of meets and bounds are landmarks. And the clear west bound of the school track was a creek that meandered. Well, they actually start with a call down here. They go up in Varas over, and then they say, while this is a straight line in the actual survey, they say, then downstream with the creek to Big Sandy, or whatever they may have called it a different name, the Big Sandy Creek. So one of the confirmations that we've got the track in the right place, besides the fact that it's talking about a creek of the right length and the location to the gray house, is the size of the lot. It was 1.5 acres that was donated to the county. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw a polygon around that. We don't have Varas in Google Earth, but we do have the acres, and we know it was 1.5 acres. So there's the school track. I'm going to do this. I'm just drawing roughly on the outside here, and then when I finish up down here, and you see we've got 1.5 acres. So I think this is the deeded track. Again, yeah. So then the question becomes, well, where the heck is the school? Again, going back to the hillshade, when this part of the meets, they said, going, northwest till you hit the creek. Well, what did they mean by the creek? Was it like down the middle here? Or was it the edge of the creek? That's a little ambiguous. So this whole polygon could well move over a little bit. So I say that I've been futzing around here taking stuff off. So I say that because when we're looking for the school, logical places. One thing, did they build a school on the track? That happens. We've had instances where a piece of land is deeded and they wind up building, not exactly. It was surveying back back in the 19th century was, not an exact science. Um, you notice there is a trail that runs through here. I mean, your first temptation is like, what is that? That building is there indeed in 37. You see it's gone in 64. I mean, that's pretty far afield from where the school tract appears to have been, right here. On the other hand, we've got spots like this, cleared spots. Makes you wonder. One thing I did, one interesting thing, again, turn on the hillshade again. So this is an interesting creek. And you notice there is these are deep ravines in their springs. There appears to be a place where there was a crossing. Place on the hillshade on the LiDAR kind of corresponds to this right in here. So they're, if you're coming off of the main road here, coming up here, is it passing right over that? And if you look at that in the hillshade, with the caveat that the hillshade is more recent, but I don't think they were doing a lot of development down in the creek. It looks like there was probably a crossing from the road here, and you can see traces of it there. And when you look into 37, there's it certainly appears that there's some kind of traffic that goes across the creek down to this spot. And then these structures over here, both of which are, this one is gone in 64. This one still seems to be there. The shadow kind of makes it hard to see, but here's a building down here in 64 that is gone in 37. So that was built after 37. So we have these two buildings, but and there's some kind of pin down here. I don't think those are the school, unless they just built. I mean, this is an interesting building, but if the school was over here, I'd say it was either in here, or there's also the possibility that it was. Can do this. It was shaded, it was obscured by trees. I mean, keep in mind when they did the survey, what was it, 1880 or 1890? There were 50 people. The population for Nameless was 50 people. So that's presumably men, women, and children. So when you got a population of 50 people, I'm thinking you got a pretty small school initially, especially when it was the tract was deeded to the Gray family. So sadly, where the school was at, we will probably never know, even if we were to go over and start walking around, because had some user errors going on there. Because even this is before the cabin was moved in, as we all know. I mean, even more development has gone on in this area. So if the school was in this area anywhere, it's probably gone by now. Any remains of it. It looks like they're running, Treviso's running some kind of, I don't know, wastewater or some kind of filtering system or something. Back to the 37. One thing, here's something that's odd I can't figure out. So this is Big Sandy Creek. It looks like some kind of building down in the creek. Why you would put a building down in the creek, I have no idea. Unless that's I don't know what that is. What I had noticed before looking at LiDAR, this was a ford, and when you look at the 37s, you can. So off of Nameless Road, the old path of Nameless Road, there was a road that kind of, you can see it goes here and heads for the creek, and there is a crossings right in here. Okay, so one thing they're doing, they're heading up to the road that we know is the old County Road 290, which was that's how you got to Baghdad and Liberty Hill. So it's obviously dovetailing in with that. And then there's also coming down this way. They're off of the main road. There's also a dovetail, taking a shortcut down to. So this is a river ford, and what's interesting is that when you look at the LiDAR, I mean, it popped out in the LiDAR as well. I mean, there's ruts. It looks like there are still remnants of ruts that show up in here. You can see part of the ruts right here. And that rut continues on out. I mean, it's still there in the pasture, whatever's over in that area. That's the beauty of LiDAR, is you can pick stuff up. It's like, oh my God, you would have never seen that. You can see swales in various places, but yeah. So here's an old road, and this was apparently some kind of river ford, and it makes you wonder also. So if you're coming, for example, let's say you're not coming from the north, you're coming from the south. That would be a logical shortcut, rather than cross over, and do this kind of thing. You'd say, hey, what I'd like to do is make a turn here and go down this way and cross, because I'm going up to Baghdad. And then, yeah, anyway. And if you're the Grays headed over to the school, you're going to go down the old road. And let me pull off. Do I have roads on here? No, I don't. Okay, so you're going to go like this. And, maybe that crossing that we looked at, right here. And then you're going to head to the school. Maybe the school was right there. So anyway, you kind of start to make out what the thoroughfares were back in the day before the major highways. On the topic of LiDARs, I mean, one of these springs and creeks and stuff always, and ruts, swales, you're always looking for stuff like that. So knowing the schools in this area, and again, maybe it's nothing, but this spot here, you've got the sun is coming from the northwest. So in this particular case, there was a pretty good little indention right there, and then you see the white at the bottom. That's a raised bank, which was that a spring of some kind at that location. And when we pull that off, that's right in this area. And your eyes start playing, funny stuff with you. These are some, back in the day, there could have been, these are probably some kind of oaks. It's hard to tell, but you wonder, maybe there was a spring that they dug in here. I really wish we had popped this open and said, oh, there it is, but I just don't know. I mean, that spot is, within the school track. And again, if you move the school track over a little bit, then you start picking up possible stuff over here as a potential location. I mean, this is obviously a cleared area. There's obviously some kind of road that ran by here. And these people are obviously using this road, presumably to get to the main road to go to Baghdad, Leander, and elsewhere, and to the general store, post office. Okay, so I'm going to wrap that up. That's just kind of my initial takes on looking at the 1937. I'd say if we can figure out what that is, that's going to be, now that we know that this was the main road and that's the main road and the USGS said Nameless was here, it would really be good to know what the heck that is. Because that's a pretty good sizable building. I mean, if you compare that with, for example, the size of Nameless School today, they're different shapes, but a comparable size. And there's the cemetery and the school tract and the gray cabin. Gray cabin had a patio, and the only thing that looks like you can tell that has changed has been a reconfiguration of the outbuildings. I really think that building looks amazingly like in '64, the building that moved up here. So anyway, that's the 1937. Hopefully we can figure out some other details and learn some more information. So I'm going to say this is part 1, and maybe something will follow.